Human Rights Watch is accusing the paramilitary group in war-torn Sudan of sexual violence against women, including rape, gang rape, and forced child marriages. The organization also says the warring parties are blocking survivors' access to critical emergency care and humanitarian aid. I'm now joined by Mohamed Osman, who is a researcher at Human Rights Watch Africa division. Mohamed, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. Is the paramilitary group, are they the only ones against whom these accusations are being leveled? In other words, the army of the state is not at all involved, or certainly not from the information that you have?
So this is a good start, because based on the information we received, of course, most of the cases been attributed to the rapid support forces in terms of sexual violence. But there have been cases attributed to the Sudanese armed forces, including cases of rape in certain areas in the capital that they retook earlier this year. Sudanese armed forces and their related authorities in particular are responsible about the willful obstruction of aid. That includes, bureaucratic impediment, delays of issuing visas for humanitarian workers, harassment and intimidation. So definitely both parties are responsible of wide range of abuses in this case.
In terms of like food and stuff not going in, and aid, medical supplies, and so, is it because the rapid support forces have now usurped the powers of the government in the areas where they are dominant?
So it is significant, given also the expansive territorial control of the RSF, especially in Khartoum, but also in other parts. They have not really shown any indication they are interested in any form of civilian administration or form of local governance. The Sudanese armed forces, which is the de facto government that is now in Port Sudan, continue to practice and function as a state allegedly, and therefore, they present themselves to be the sovereign power of the country. Just as a reminder, Sudan has been suspended its membership from the African Union following the coup that took place in 2021, which it's been done by both sides who are now fighting. So there is a question of legitimacy on one hand, but on the other hand, the Sudanese armed forces have been blocking aid for different reasons, saying they want to control how it goes, they want to monitor it more. At the same time, the rapid support forces say, yes, we are willing to cooperate, but we're seeing them looting supplies and warehouses in other parts of the country.
And of course, there has not been the kind of attention to Sudan as there has been to, the other conflicts, happening and elsewhere in the world, like the one that Russia is involved in, like, for example, what is happening in Gaza as well.
I mean, Sudanese, reasonably feeling that are left behind by the world. And there are so many indicators. As you said, we're not seeing the sense of urgency to intervene in this situation in an effective and coordinated way. I mean, we have seen shy moves happening even at the continental level from the African Union. We're not yet seeing much happening from the regional organizations. But looking at the United Nations Security Council, very shy movement and discussions around civilian protection. And this is one of the reasons why in our report, we made very clear we're urging the United Nations Security Council and the African Union to work together, to put pen to paper, to study what the options they have to protect civilians, how they can push for unfettered humanitarian access, and end the violation and abuses against Sudanese civilians.
And of course, I mean, the other difficulty has been to even get a clear sense of what is going on the ground, because there are no journalists there, very few actually documenting this war and bringing it out, into the homes of people all around the world.
Of course, and this is a crucial gap. There is no independent monitoring. The UN footprint has been reduced since day one, the start of the conflict last year. We're not seeing the UN in many parts of the countries in terms of hotspots. Yes, we're seeing some of the international non-governmental organizations like MSF and others, but we're not seeing the big organizations who could help with mandate and resources to scrutinize the situation on the ground. I mean, just one point on this. So far, we don't even know the total death toll of Sudanese civilians since the war started. I mean, this is one aspect, one example to the fact that we have no access to credible data on the impact of the conflict on Sudanese population.
Is it for lack of trying on the part of your UN agencies, for example, that this is not happening, or are conditions on the ground such that it's difficult, if not impossible, for them to move in and begin to, document how many people are dead, how many people need help, how many of these other acts, rape, gang rapes, and the like, are actually happening?
Yeah, I mean, even in terms of our findings in the investigation of sexual violence, when one of the aspects, the lack of infrastructures in terms of the UN, in terms of responding and monitoring sexual violence. And that's why we're asking them to improve this. So there are things could happen on the UN side in terms of, prioritization of human rights monitoring, for instance. But the big bulk of that lays on the donors of the UN, the countries and the governments with the political leverage and ability to press the warring parties to allow more access to the UN and other independent international organizations, but also at the same time to fund and empower the UN and other organizations to be able to do the work they have been doing.
Is it because there are no, countries or blocs that actually have influence on the warring parties that could force them to end the war?
I think there are many countries and many governments. I think it depends on the ways that some people would analyze it. I mean, just for example, the leader of the Rapid Support Forces, Hemeti, months ago, he did a regional tour visiting, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, and South Africa. He was met by the highest levels of officials in these countries. We don't really know to the extent of the conversations, how much, so these countries, have the capital to start engaging with the warring parties, whether bilaterally, whether working through partners in the region, countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia. There are countries who have been accused of meddling to the conflict based on the UN panel of experts reporting, especially the United Arab Emirates. So there are a set of countries, there are a set of organizations like the African Union Peace and Security Council, UN Security Council, the IGAD. We are not seeing them working together yet. I think this is what is missing from the conversation, is the concerted, coordinated action that is guided by clear agenda around accountability and human rights.
Mohamed Osman, let me thank you for your time. He's a researcher with Human Rights Watch. They have observed increases in sexual and gender-based violence in the capital, Khartoum. Of course, they're calling on people to focus their attention there. Coming up.